All right. Hello, everybody. I'm John McDonough. I'm going to be the host of your webinar today. Again, this is Measuring Shopping Behavior, a primer on Google Analytics Enhanced Ecommerce, sponsored by Avatria. I'm going to go ahead and get started. People may be filtering in for another minute or two, but I will go ahead and share the agenda and just kind of set the expectations for what we'll be talking about today. So, we do have quite a bit of ground to cover. We're going to start with just kind of a quick overview of who we are, why we're doing a webinar on enhanced e-commerce in the first place. We'll be talking a little bit about the specifics of enhanced e-commerce, what tags you should be implementing, how to best implement them, how to audit what you have today, as well as some common mistakes that we see customers and clients make. At the end of the call, we will be conducting an example audit of a live site of one of our registered attendees' e-commerce sites, showing what I perform, when I do this for clients. And at the very end of the call, we'll be, have a chance for discussion. However, if you do have any questions that come up throughout the call, feel free to type them into the chat. We have some moderators on hand who will, be looking out for those and be posting those to the rest of the webinar, and I'll try to respond to those as they come up. So, really quickly, want to quickly introduce myself and Avatria. So Avatria is a full-service e-commerce consulting firm. We were founded in 2014 by a team of industry veterans. Our founders and most of our staff came from some of the larger e-commerce consulting agencies, such as Accenture, Sapient Razorfish, Acuity Group, a few others. So in a lot of ways, we're a very traditional e-commerce consulting agency. So we do things like platform implementations, search enhancement, tracking and analytics, data science, performance testing. If it's related to e-commerce, most likely we do it. With our own kind of small agency spin, which means that we emphasize, quality, quality and value over just kind of numbers, if you will. So our clientele currently includes mainly enterprise size businesses. However, we do work with SMB businesses as well. So we have both B2C and B2B clients. That includes Discount Tire, who you may be familiar with, and Annixter, who's a Fortune 500 wire and cable distributor. Both of those clients we've worked with for over 3 years at this point, which kind of goes to show the commitment we have to building, sustainable, supportive long-term relationships with the clients that we do work with. In addition to our services work, we also built and launched Avatria Convert, a SaaS product that uses behavioral data and machine learning to optimize conversion on e-commerce sites. In a nutshell, Convert is a findability optimization suite. So we will optimize sort order on category and search result pages, as well as provide personalized recommendations for use across the site. I'm John McDonough, as I said earlier. I'm the lead product manager for Avatria Convert. I've worked, so one thing I should mention really quickly is that Avatria Convert does use enhanced e-commerce as one of our primary data sources. So I've done a lot of work with enhanced e-commerce in the past. I helped develop the tag audit process that we perform for all new customers, making sure that they have, proper data collection practices in place and that they're recording everything we need them to be. I've also advised dozens of clients on the proper implementation of EE tagging. So if you have any questions, about the ins and outs of enhanced e-commerce, again, I should be able to field those. You may be wondering why we decided to put together a whole webinar on enhanced e-commerce. As you can probably tell, we're very big fans of it. We're hosting this. We built some significant portion of it. We obviously believe very strongly that all e-commerce companies should be using enhanced e-commerce or something like it to track, what's going on their website. Some of the reasons why we really like it, for starters, it's free. The Google Analytics Suite is a really powerful analytics solution. And enhanced e-commerce specifically allows e-commerce sites to track customer shopping behavior across the entire funnel. So there's a whole wealth of data that can be gathered from it. We'll be talking about this, in just a couple of minutes. But once you have this data, you can do a lot of really cool things with it. Evaluate the performance of individual products, compare how different categories, brands, and lists on the site are performing, see how different aspects of your conversion funnel are performing. You can even track internal promotions on your site. So once you have all that data in place, the whole goal of analytics is to be making better decisions. And so enhanced e-commerce is going to help make better decisions in the realm of merchandising, understanding what products to boost, what products are underperforming, so on and so forth. It can help with site design decisions. So, how can you improve your product detail page? What components are people interacting with? What is working? What is not working? Similarly, it can help with customer experience decisions. So, how can you improve your checkout flow? Things of that nature. So, I started off by saying that I do believe that every e-commerce company should be using this. I know that that can sound intimidating to a lot of clients. A lot of clients that we talk to at first say, we don't have a data team in place. We want to be using data better, but we don't have the ability to now. I think that it's important to note that even if you're not where you want to be in terms of your analytics program, I think that enhanced e-commerce is absolutely the starting point. Not only will you get data that even a small team can act upon today, but even when you do start bringing in a larger data team or a more focused data team, the first thing that they're going to need, the first thing they're going to ask for is good quality data. If you don't have good data and you don't have good data collection practices in place, they're not going to be able to do very much for you. So, for that reason, what we always advise clients on is, even if, getting a data practice in place is a few months down the road, get your data collection in today, because it's just going to pay off when, those people start and they have all of this, high quality data at their fingertips to start analyzing and to start, pulling insights out of. So that's enough evangelizing for now. Obviously, I think that this is a really crucial and important product. But I think I want to focus now on how to get this into place and how to properly track the things you can with enhanced e-commerce. So, what I will say is that when we start with a lot of customers, we always start, do you have enhanced e-commerce? And a lot of them say, I don't know, or I think we're tracking that, which in my mind is always a bad sign. If you don't know if you're using it, that usually means you aren't, or possibly you are, but you're not tracking everything you should be. So the first thing that we always do for new clients is put them through an enhanced e-commerce audit so that we can better understand what data they're collecting and what data we need to start collecting. So there's a few steps we usually go about in conducting one of these audits. The first thing, and again, these are things that we do, but you can do yourself. The first place you'll probably want to start is by just reviewing Google Analytics reports. So, under the conversions tab, the e-commerce reports, there's a number of reports in there. Start by poking around in there. If you see a bunch of zeros, that's generally a sign that something isn't being recorded. And that's a place to start in terms of what you're looking at. Also look for other things. Are there, some pieces of data that you have partially or for some products but not other products? Or do you have data for some products but not others? Those can both be indicators that something is wrong with your data collection and requires further inspection. From there, what we do always for every client is to actually go into the site and perform shopping actions like a customer would and try to see what your site is actually recording as we do that. So there's a couple of tools that you can use that will help you track what is going on. They both are for Google Chrome, the Google Chrome browser. The first is called wasp.inspector. This is, kind of my preferred tool. I find it a little bit easier to use because it has this nice visual layout. However, Google Analytics Debugger is also definitely worth recommending. It actually includes some additional information that WASP does not. For more technically inclined folks who are used to reading through code bases and reading lines of code or spending a lot of time in the browser console, it'll definitely be right at home to them. Both of these are really valuable tools here. So, in addition to these, we've also put together a checklist for enhanced e-commerce that you can use to help confirm that you're tracking and recording the right pieces of information. So we're going to share this in the chat now. You can download this and use this for yourself. We hope that it'll be a useful tool for you. In addition to all of these things, if you end up starting on this and feeling like you're in over your head or you're not sure that you're doing it properly, feel free to reach out to us. We do this all the time, as you can imagine. At the end of this call, you are going to be taken to a landing page that will have a little form where you can request us to perform an audit for you. We're more than happy to do so to help you figure out, how to get more out of your analytics practice. All right, so let's get into the actual nitty-gritty of enhanced e-commerce and the tags that you should be looking at. So for this webinar, I'm going to be focusing only on the enhanced e-commerce shopping funnel tags. As I mentioned earlier, enhanced e-commerce can be used to track promotions on your site. However, it ends up being a little bit more of a niche use for a lot of users. And there's so much value just to be gained from the shopping funnel alone that I want to focus most of our time and attention on that. So here's a quick, quick graphic showing what the funnel looks like. For starters, we'll talk about product list views. Product list views, I'm probably going to slip in and out of calling them product impressions. It's the same exact thing. But basically, product impression tracks if a customer has viewed a product in a list, such as the category page, in a set of search results, even product recommendation carousels, things like that. Tracking impressions, what customers have seen, allows us to calculate really valuable metrics such as click-through rate, buy-to-impression rate, and a number of others. A lot of times, product impressions or product list views are not implemented by a lot of clients we work with, and I think that's a huge missed opportunity. One of the things that's really valuable about product impressions is that they allow us to look at these per impression rates, which allows us to evaluate product performance independent of opportunity. So the best example of this is that, we all know this from Google or even from our own browsing habits. If I go into a category page, I'm always looking at the top 3 or 5 or 10 products on the page. However, how far I get beyond that is questionable. We have a saying that we like to use where, you could hide a dead body on the 5th page of search results and no one would ever see it. Obviously that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but the point remains that not all products have the same opportunity for customers to view them, click on them, add them to their cart, or purchase them, which makes it really hard to make direct product-to-product comparisons unless you're considering the opportunity that they had to, have activity happen to them. And impressions allow you to do that. It helps you see, all right, you know what? Product A has ton of clicks, ton of detail views, good number of carts. However, product X, which is typically on the 3rd page, has not nearly the number of impressions, but is performing almost as well on clicks and carts and some of these other numbers, which might indicate to you that that's a product that could be better served higher up in the list, where it's going to get more eyeballs on it and more opportunities to be purchased. Really quickly, I'll share with you some of the key parameters for product impressions. I'm not going to talk about all of these, though I will say that product list name and position are 2 really crucial things that sometimes get overlooked in terms of people's implementation of product list views. Product list name helps you understand where a customer interacted with the product, whether that's the specific category page they were on, the search query they used to find it, or even the type of recommendation carousel that they found it within. Position will also help you understand where in the list a product was when it was viewed, which again can be used for really sophisticated data analysis purposes. Avatria Convert, again, our product uses both of those tools to do some really cool stuff. We can, talk about that at the end of the call if anyone has any questions. One bit of detail I will provide about product list views is that there's kind of typically two different ways you can implement these. The basic or default version will have, if a customer lands on a category page, I'll just record an impression for every single product on that page. Obviously, it's really good information to have. However, you can also push it further by implementing what we call true view impression tagging. And basically what true view impression tagging does is it only records impressions when a customer actually scrolls far enough on the page to view a product. That's going to give you, if you implement true view impression tagging, you're going to get, a lot more precise of an understanding of what customers interacted with. It's also just going to be data that better reflects the reality of a customer's journey. So if you have any questions about either of those things, again, feel free to type them in the chat, or feel free to shoot us an email after this call, and we're happy to help advise you on how to, how to best record this information. Oops, excuse me. All right. From here, the next step of the funnel is going to be the product list click. This goes hand in hand with the product list view. Once somebody views a product, if they click on it, you're going to want to record a product list click. This again is a really crucial tag. The reason for it gets a little bit in the weeds, but I think it's really important to understand. And that's what Google Analytics calls the attribution funnel. So basically, or the attribution chain, excuse me. That comes back to that idea of the product list name parameter, the understanding of where an action occurred or what part of the site drove a series of actions for a given product. So obviously, it's one thing to know how many people added a specific product to their cart or viewed its product detail page or ultimately bought it. However, there's a much greater level of detail available to you, which is, what categories are driving the most sales on my site, or what search queries are people using to find this specific product. And the attribution funnel or the attribution chain will help you understand that. Basically, what Google does is that if a list click is recorded with a specific list name attached to it, Google will assume that any other actions that occur with that product in the same session can be attributed back to that same list. So, if I look at, product X in category Y, I click on it, I visit its detail page, I add it to my cart, and then I continue browsing the site. I look at 10 or 20 more products, I add a couple to my cart. When I finally check out and complete my purchase, because Google knows that I interacted with product X from category Y earlier in the session, it knows that it can attribute these later activities back to that same list. It saves a lot of trouble in terms of technical implementation and is a really, really valuable feature. So again, I know that's a little in the weeds. I know it's a little confusing, but it's crucial to know, and it does a lot for you in terms of analytical capability. So, and now we can move on to product detail views. Honestly, not a lot to say about the detail view. This is a pretty standard action to perform. Well, if I work with customers who have enhanced e-commerce implemented, a lot of times detail views and purchases will be the only two they have. So obviously, this tracks if someone lands on a detail page for a product. There's some indication of purchase intent or consideration of purchase intent here. You will get a lot of valuable metrics out of this. Buy to detail rate will help you understand how specific detail pages are doing. Cart to detail rate is really useful for that same thing. One thing that's really nice about the detail view as well is that it allows you to record interactions that can't be tracked via clicks. So if somebody deep links into a PDP page from Google or from an affiliate link, something like that, you'll have a record of that interaction, which will help your understanding, again, of how different products are performing. The add to cart, is where people are, or where customers are starting to get serious. This tracks if someone adds it to their cart or basket. Again, this is an indication of serious intent, and so you get a lot of really valuable metrics out of this. Cart to view rate, cart to detail rate, buy to cart rate, so on and so forth. One thing I will call out is that these should be fired from wherever a user can add a product to their cart, which is going to include listing pages. If you if you have that ability, you should record this here. Same thing is true of quick view modals or carousels. This is just going to make sure that you're capturing as much data as you possibly can. What I will say about some of those use cases, those edge cases, adding to cart from list pages, quick view modals, and carousels, I would also recommend firing a click in those instances because it will help with the attribution funnel or the attribution chain, and it'll make your configuration a little bit simpler. Two quick parameters I want to call out about the add to cart tag, quantity and variant. These are new for this tag. I didn't mention these on the earlier ones. Quantity is going to record how many of a specific item were added to the cart, and variant is going to capture specific configurations. So if you're selling, something like shoes or clothing, or a product where there are different sizes or colors or configurations, variant is going to allow you to get the specifics of the product that was added to the cart, in addition to the standard product ID. We'll talk a little bit more about the distinction between those two things in just a minute. Removes from cart. This is another really overlooked tag that I think is really useful. I'm not going to explain what this is. I think you can figure it out. But the reason why I think that this is so valuable is that it's one of the few indicators you have as an e-commerce data person of a customer making a conscious decision not to purchase a product. So people abandon their cart for a ton of reasons. They get distracted, or their credit card isn't in the same room, or they decide they want to do some more research before they make a final decision. Obviously, that can tell you a certain number of things. However, having the information that somebody thought about buying this and ultimately decided not to tells you something very differently, and can indicate, potentially some sort of issue with a product, its price, or some other factor. So something to keep in mind here. Next one, second to last tag in the funnel is the checkout. This is going to track not just what products were checked out, but the progress of the customer throughout the checkout flow. So recording checkouts actually unlocks a unique report called the Google Analytics Checkout Behavior Report. And that is going to identify for you how far in the funnel customers make it before they drop off, which is going to be really helpful to you potentially in identifying issues or opportunities for enhancement. If there's a technical issue preventing people from checking out, this will help flag that. The classic example is the guest checkout. If you don't have a guest checkout option and you see that people are constantly dropping off when they're asked to create an account or log in, that might be an indicator to you that your site would benefit from, that new feature. So key parameter I do want to call out here is the step parameter. You are going to need the step parameter in place to track the progression throughout the checkout flow. And then finally, purchases. This is what the goal that all sessions are being measured against. This is tracking, when a customer completes a purchase. It's pretty basic here, though you do get both product level information and transaction level information. The transaction level information, such as transaction ID, can be really valuable for auditing and validation purposes, making sure that the products and the revenue and the shipping that you're recording in Google Analytics is aligned with what is being recorded in your e-commerce platform. So this is the funnel. Obviously there's a lot of tags here. I've called out already a number of kind of things that can trip customers up. What I do want to highlight really quickly again is some of the benefits of collecting this data. If you implement all of those tags we just reviewed, you're going to unlock the following reports in Google Analytics. E-commerce overview, which kind of gives you like a basic conversion rate, revenue, purchases, stuff like that. Shopping behavior, which will show the progression through the funnel. Checkout behavior, similarly, but just for checkout. Product performance, which allows you to go in depth on each individual product. Sales performance, which allows you to look at transaction level information. And then finally, product list performance, which allows you to look at individual lists and how they perform across the site. There's a lot here. Obviously, I just tried to cover this in 5 seconds. However, we are planning a follow-up webinar to this focused on what you can do with these reports and with some of the data that's available to you. So if you want to know more, I would definitely encourage you to be on the lookout for that invitation. And then on the right side of the slide here, I went through this really quickly on the previous slides, but I did want to provide just a quick summary of some of the metrics that are available to you once you implement all these tags. Again, this is just a small selection. There's numerous, numerous metrics that you will be able to use for analytical purposes once you implement all of these tags. Okay, cool. So we're getting close to our example audit here. Before we jump in, I do want to quickly call out a couple of common data collection mistakes that we see all of the time. So the first one is mismatched product IDs. Basically, to effectively track a product's performance across the funnel, you need to make sure that you are tracking the same product ID in each tag. I have an example of this on the right side of the slide here. As you can see in the impression tag on the top here, the customer recorded, this ID or SKU, if you will. However, this was a shoe, and so because it was a shoe, there was a size that was associated with it as well as a color. And so when they got to the cart tag, they decided to append that information to the SKU. Unfortunately, what happens when you do this is that you are going to have 2 separate products recorded in your database, and your product and your data will be split up accordingly. So if I go into the product performance report in Google Analytics, what I'm going to see is that this top ID has impressions, clicks, and detail views associated with it and nothing else. And I'm going to see that this bottom ID has no impressions, no clicks, and no detail views associated with it, but carts, checkouts, and purchases, which, basically that creates a problem. It's going to create a headache for you. It's going to require manual analysis in spreadsheets to kind of clean up and figure out how to solve that. So that's a big one we see a lot, and we would definitely recommend figuring out how to resolve or how to avoid. The second one we see a fair amount more and more is people not properly using the referral exclusion list. So if you offer a third-party checkout options such as PayPal, Amazon Pay, or one of these other services, be sure you're including the URL in your referral exclusion list on the GA property. Otherwise, what happens is when your site kicks the user out to those services to complete the transaction, it's going to reset the session. And when they come back to your site, the session will have reset, which will break the attribution chain. So Google will know what parts of your site drove everything up to checkout, and then it'll have no idea what list or what category or what search term drove the ultimate purchase, which is a missed opportunity. And then finally, one thing we see a fair amount of is inconsistent recording on listing pages. So, when you're tracking impressions or product list views, anything that your site can do that will change the products that are shown on the page should trigger the firing of a new set of impressions. So things like infinite scroll, if someone can change the sort order, apply a filter, or navigate to a new page of results, all of those should trigger a new set of impressions to be recorded for those new for those new products. All right. Well, that's the first part of our presentation here. Are there any questions about any of the items that we've talked about? If not, I will jump over to the example audit. Okay, great. So for today's tag audit, we have selected a website called Marissa Collections. They sell women's handbags, dresses, accessories, shoes, kind of you name it. It's a really nice site, and I was glad. In the interest of full disclosure, I did poke around on the site before this to make sure that I wasn't wasting everybody's time. So I'm not going to do a full audit here because we do not have the time for it. However, I will take you through some of the key steps and highlight some of the key things I'd be looking for if I were doing a full audit on this website. So for starters, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look and make sure that Google Analytics is installed properly. This is a problem we see a fair amount, and improper installation of Google Analytics will at times prevent data from being properly recorded properly. It can drop parameters. There's a lot of issues that can result from it. So in order to figure that out, what I'm going to do, sorry, I went through that pretty quickly, but I'm going to right click on the page and I'm going to view the page source. And what I'm looking for in the page source, again, this can be really intimidating to a lot of new users. But what I'm looking for is to make sure that Google Analytics is installed in the head of the site. So I'm going to be looking for it, below here and above the body. And so in order to figure that out, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a quick Control F, and I'm going to search for the end of the head, which will tell me where the body starts. So I want to see Google installed before line 632. Next thing I'm going to do from there is I'm going to search for Google just to try to find it in the code. And what I can see here really quickly is a script that appears to install Google Analytics, which is great. It's on line 178, which is above the body, which is a good sign. I'm just going to quickly poke around a little bit further, and I'm going to find a little bit more about the Shopify code here, which shows my tracking ID. So that's a great thing to see here. Again, this is within the head still, which is good. I can see that Enhanced Ecommerce is installed here, which is good news. One thing I am going to note really quickly, this is kind of for myself as much as anybody else, is that this appears to be loading via Shopify's built-in Enhanced Ecommerce tracking tool. It's good that this is being tracked. However, there are a number of known issues with Shopify's implementation of Enhanced Ecommerce that affect pretty much every single site that uses that tool. So that's not great. We've written a blog post about some of those issues that are related to Shopify's implementation of Enhanced Ecommerce. We will share a link to that blog post now if you're curious, and if you're a Shopify user, it's definitely something you should be aware of. We'll talk a little bit more about the implications of those problems as we go through the rest of this. Okay, so here I am. I'm on a category page here. This is typically where I start. I'm going to start at the top of the funnel, the product list view. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect the page. So again, that was right click in Chrome and click inspect. I'm just going to pull up the inspect tool. When I'm using WASP, again, the tool that I prefer, there's a separate tab for it within this section. And this allows me to, once I load that, I need to reload the page in order for it to get all of the data that it's recording. So I'm going to pull this out so I can read what's in here really quickly. And then what you'll see in WASP here is one thing that is very cool that I should have mentioned earlier is that WASP doesn't just look at Google Analytics. It actually looks at all of the different cookies and scripts that are being fired on your site. So you can see all of the different things that are being run on Marissa collections here. And what I'm going to look for as I'm scrolling through here is Google Analytics tags. This is the source of the script, and then you'll see that all of the scripts or all of the cookies that fire are over here on the right side. I'm looking for anything that's labeled collect. These are the tags or the hits that are actually sent to Google Analytics. So if I click on this one, I can inspect a little bit. I can see where I am. I can see the tracking ID or the property ID that this is being sent to. I can see what type of hit is being sent, as well as a little bit more information. One thing I don't see, which I should see normally, is I should see impressions fired. So that's a bad sign off the bat. In full honesty, it's what I was expecting. One of the big problems with Shopify's Enhanced Ecommerce implementation is that it does not record impressions. So there will be some cases, as we'll see as we go on, that multiple collects will be fired. You're going to want to look through each of them to fully understand what data is being recorded on the site. But what I would say right away if I was performing an audit is no impressions are fired. Obviously, typically what I would do is I would go to multiple category pages. I would run some search terms and see if they're firing on search result pages, so on and so forth, just to make sure that there wasn't an individual error here. I'm not going to do that now in the interest of time. I would also like go to the second page, mess around with some of these filters, stuff like that, just to make sure that I'm being thorough. Next step is going to be to click on a product to see if a click fires. So I will click on the first product in the list here. One thing I'll call out about WASP is that it does create these tabs for each page that I visit. This is another nice feature of it. It makes it really easy to understand what fired when during the flow. And so what I do want to make sure for certain events like clicks and like carts, even in some cases checkouts, you may want to proceed to the previous tab to make sure that the tag that I'm looking for did not fire before the page refreshed. I can see that it didn't here. This is the same tag that I looked at earlier, which is a bad sign. It suggests that a click didn't fire. I'll just quickly scroll down on the new page that I'm on to see if a click fired, and it did not, which again, interest of full disclosure is what I was expecting because Shopify's implementation never fires clicks. So that's a big missing, a big downside to using Shopify's implementation, unfortunately. What I do see here is, again, we have our page view tag for the new detail page. And what you will see here is a second collect, which is, as you can see, the detail tag. So that's great news. The way you can tell that this is a detail tag is by this product action field. It's in this e-commerce section, which is used to indicate that this is an enhanced e-commerce tag. You can see that this also includes the currency code, which is really good news. As I scroll down this tag a little bit further, what I will see is the product that's involved here. So, here's the brand of the product. That's great. The category, great. We have the name here. We have the price. The quantity is a little bit odd. Quantity doesn't usually apply to detail. That's okay. We also have the SKU as well as the variant. So all of that's great news. The detail tag, aside for this little oddness about the quantity, all of that is really great news. So that is implemented, I would say more or less properly. I'll then add this product to my cart to see what occurs here. And again, what you may have noticed happened is that an additional collect fired. That is an early indication to me that an ad probably worked properly. I'll click on that, and again, I'll see in the e-commerce section that an add to cart was fired. Great news. I will look here and see that the product fired. All of that is really good news. We've got the price still. We've got the same SKU as we had previously. All of that is looking really good. So glad to see it. So really quickly, so that I can show off the remove tag, I'm going to quickly just go in and add a second product. I'm going to kind of fast forward through this a little bit in order to kind of highlight something for you. One thing that I'm going to do in this case actually is I'm going to select a different default size. This was something I couldn't do with the handbags, and so this is one thing that's important about testing with different types of products, different page templates, things like that, to make sure that you're revealing, every potential issue you could be. Because one thing I know from, again, previously looking at the site a little bit, is that if I add this size 8 to my cart rather than the size 4, what is going to happen is that, it did actually work properly this time, so that's great. I wonder if it's because I clicked so quickly. If I click on size 4, it looks like they fixed it in the last day, so that's great news. Anyways, this cart is working properly, so that's good. When I came in here the other day, actually, when I had changed the size, Shopify did not record it properly. It did not have the proper SKU, did not have the proper name. It was missing a lot of these parameters. So that was a problem I had identified, which did not occur in this instance, which is troubling to me, if I can be honest with you. It means that there are inconsistencies in the way that these tags are firing, which could be related to some larger issue. It could be something about the way the page loads. But it is something I would investigate further as I was doing this audit to see if I could replicate the problem that I had seen earlier in my browsing history. Anyways, we'll ignore that for now. We'll go up here, click on the cart, just to see what is going on here. And what I'm guessing we will see is, just a page view tag, which is good. I am going to remove a product from my cart. And we can see the page reloaded. So I'm going to quickly check. Nothing was added here. And nothing was added here. Nope. Again, this is what I was expecting. Shopify does not typically record removes from carts. Another potential problem with their implementation. Now I'm going to kick off the checkout process. So I will proceed to checkout. Ooh, that's not what I expected to happen. Let's try this again. Okay, there we go. So a couple of other things that I am going to call out here is that what we would expect to happen when we land in the checkout is for a checkout tag to fire. So looking at here, I do see a page view tag. I see this second tag, which is related to checkout, but you'll notice that the e-commerce section is missing, which means that this is not an actual enhanced e-commerce tag. So I'm kind of curious why that is. One thing that does happen with Shopify is that if you've previously entered information as I have here, it will jump you forward into the checkout flow. You still want to be recording checkouts properly, which this clearly isn't. I'm going to proceed just back to the first step to see if anything differently is happening there. And what I will see is that, again, no checkout is firing. Interesting. Okay. Well, that's not ideal. Again, this is another inconsistency, I will say. When I came here earlier in the day, when I navigated this page, I did see a checkout tag fire on this step, which suggests, again, some issue with the way they have implemented this tagging. But what I would typically see, or what I would expect to see, is I would expect to see step 1 fire here. When I proceeded to the shipping phase, I would expect a second tag to show step 2, so on and so forth. And obviously, something is preventing that from occurring. So I'm not going to go through to the purchase phase because I'm not looking to currently at this time rack up $5,000 charge on my credit card, and I don't want to have to, provide a cancellation of a purchase to Marissa Collections. But I do want to thank them for allowing us to audit our site on this webinar. I hope that this was instructive to you. As you can see, there's a lot of subtle issues that can occur with tagging, even from 1 hour difference looking now versus an hour ago when I saw a few different behaviors. So it can be crucial to be very thorough when you're looking at this. It can also help to have an expert like us take a look at this for you. So I'm going to open this up now quickly for questions, if anyone has any questions about things that they've seen. It looks like we do not have any questions. So really quickly, what I want to do then with my last couple of minutes remaining is quickly introduce you to Avatria Convert. Again, this is our product suite that utilizes enhanced e-commerce to improve findability on your website. So basically what we do is it's pretty simple in theory. We figure out what customers are most likely to purchase, and we move them to the top of the page. So as we'll see on the right side here, we use an enhanced e-commerce data to figure out, we use shopping data and machine learning to figure out what customers are most likely to purchase. This is basically a set of rankings over here on the right side. And then we will use sort of your existing e-commerce tool to move that so that the most relevant products are always at the top of the page. Again, the idea is very simple in theory. However, machine learning is very complicated, as you can imagine, and figuring out what patterns are indicative of purchasing behavior are also really challenging. So we actually look at over 100 different metrics from enhanced e-commerce to help figure out what products are most likely to perform. and we implement this way. This type of tool is exactly what sites like Amazon, Walmart, and Google are doing. It's why, as I joked earlier, you can bury a body on the 5th page of results, because sites are getting so good at making sure that the most relevant products to you are at the top of the page that you don't need to go any further. So we're trying to make this type of functionality available to every e-commerce site in the market without needing to go through a lengthy rip and replace process with your existing search engine. So happy to make more information available to you after this call if desired. But I did want to quickly introduce our product just so you understand some of what is possible if you implement enhanced e-commerce on your site. So thank you all for the time. I hope this has been instructive. Again, at the end of this call, you'll be taken to a page that allows you to request a tag audit. Feel free to do so. I'm happy to perform them, and I'm happy to have consultations with you to talk about how you can improve your data collection practices. But for now, that'll be it, and have a good afternoon.